How's everyone doing today? All good? Wow, second day, huh? It's been intense. Who was at the party yesterday? Not many? Oh, I tried to be a little bit. Had to wake up early to be prepared for today. So, my name is Valle. I work for Worldwide Technology. For those of you who don't know us, we are a very large partner of Vodafone right now. Been about 2 years working on the relationship. As a company, we are 5,000 people worldwide, do about 12 billion on yearly revenues, and we're hyper-growing with a lot of things that are changing in our industry. And it's a great company to work for. I see a lot of innovation, things that we're doing for the enterprise business, things that we're doing for our service providers. And now with the things that are coming on 5G and innovations around that, I couldn't see a better fit and better momentum of understanding what those verticals are doing, what their needs are, and what are the trends in technology that are coming from a service provider perspective, and making this marriage between technology that are verticalized to their use cases and a platform that can actually enable that, right? So this is the main focus of the conversation, how we can enable this innovation, how we can fast innovate, and how we can find partnerships with those verticalized ideas that can enable the use cases that we're all seeing on videos and streams at Mobile World Congress and all this cool stuff, how we can manage to get this together, right? So I want to start with, just because, before I go there, this picture is from Futurama. I love Simpsons, so that's why I started to do that. So this first picture was in 1999, when this first idea of the Futurama came. And can you relate that picture to something else you've recently seen in the media? Anyone had any guess? About tubes transporting people at speeds, very fast speeds, right? Hyperloop. And that was 2013, so about 14 years before something that's crazy down there, and actually people trying to implement the technology. And again, how would Elon Musk hire a Hyperloop engineer, right? Let's put it in Glassdoor, let's put it on LinkedIn, looking for Hyperloop engineers. How do you do that? You don't. You need to find people with the right expertise, with the previous backgrounds that can relate to something that you want to build. And that's the main thing we want to discuss today, how we can actually build those ideas, build those visions without having the skills, the knowledge, and the background of many, many years. It's something very, very new we're talking about today. So the first thing I want to discuss about as well is this idea of Eureka, right? We don't have that, right? It's very nice, very posh. I found this idea, let's go ahead and do it. It takes sweat, blood, and tears. And evolving this technology, evolving these ideas into technology, consumable technology, takes a lot of time. If you think about gaming, if you think about virtual reality, if you think about augmented reality, even the platforms that you're seeing today, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort from many, many people. So it's not just about having a great idea, it's about implementing this idea, collaborating, and working very, very hard. And the other thing as well is we should work on a connected world. We are in a connected world. I know there's a lot of IP, there's a lot of intellectual property, there's a lot of fear of competition. But 5G will not be done by a single company. 5G will not be done by a single supplier or not even a single small ecosystem. I was yesterday here on a panel talking about how our consumer IoT is now completely broken to the sense of not making it easy for people to actually consume on an end-to-end, the things you see, on the videos that you talk to Google and everything happens, right? There's a lot of partners and ecosystems that don't connect. That's difficult, and that's not a way we should be working together. We need to collaborate. We need to connect instead of protect, so we can enable those use cases. And that's where the partnerships that actually even the previous keynote speaker was talking about, how we can enable with partners, how can you work better together to describe those ideas, to incubate, prototype those ideas before you move to the next phase. And again, that's the main thing, right? How can you be prepared, right, when those use cases come? So I'm speaking to many people about new technologies, and some of them have a very thoughtful leadership mindset about, oh, let's make it happen, this is the future. Other people may think about it as, oh, we're not ready yet for it, it's too early. Guess what? It's going to be too early until it's going to be too late, right? Until something happens, until the next Pokemon Go happens, and you oversubscribe your network, and then you need to figure out how to cope with the bandwidth, how to cope with the technology. So what are the things you need to do today to protect your future? How are you going to survive? How are you going to thrive on this technology world? What are the challenges, right? So these numbers are constantly evolving. So we know that by 2022, we're going to have about 50 billion connected devices in IoT. We know for a fact that the exabytes are going to increase to 25 by 2022 as well. We have, for example, the new applications coming. Pokemon Go is one of them. We have many other applications that actually have deployed a new way of interacting, that we have lots of people connected to a single point, trying to play with augmented reality. These are new landscapes. These are new things that networks on the 4G, on the LTE, are not ready to cope with that. So the 5G, for example, will be a way to support those applications. And the network densification, the fiberization, right? It's very common that we think about all this cool stuff that consumers do, but your network will only be as strong, your wireless network will only be as strong as your fixed network, right? Everything needs to backhaul somewhere. And that's why, they're seeing a lot of investments coming on that side. And it's innovation, it's everywhere. And that's where, it's not just about creating innovation on radio networks, but also on everything that you don't see, right? So the far edge and the edge computing is one of them. Optical and metro transport is another area of massive investments. The core backbone and orchestration. These are things you don't see as consumers, but these are things that are happening right now in massive investments. Guess what? The tip of the iceberg doesn't happen if you don't have the infrastructure ready. There's a lot of investments, not only from innovation, making things more autonomous, making things less reliable on human intervention, but also about disaggregation in terms of making the 5G fully consumable, but on a dispersed asset landscape. So how can you assemble all this together and make the user experience the same as before? We're seeing a lot of people talking about disaggregation. We're seeing a lot of people talking about making sure that these solutions stack work, but some people still want to buy the experience they had before for a single industry, right? So how you can actually have the experience of buying that with the experience of enabling the 5G ecosystem. And I'm talking about really the single solution stack versus the hundreds of OEMs now playing on the 5G ecosystem. And that's just an idea of where we are right now. We think about 4G and 3G and 2G. Right? When 2G, 80% was networks, right? So the radio networks investments for telco was just about that. Now we're moving completely the change. 3G was about 30%. 4G, I would say 50-50. But now it's very clear. The radio networks is very, very small amounts. The very majority of the investments are going in the back end. And another area we're working together with many companies, and that's one of the reasons I'm here as well, is how you change that, how you change the operating model, how you work with new ways of accruing revenue. If you think about what happened with telcos and many other companies that relied on networks and 4G networks, they made a lot of money. Content business made a lot of money on likes of Netflix, Amazon Prime, and other types of companies that works over the top of a network. Telcos had to catch up on this. They had to work with content distribution networks. They had to work to make sure their customer experience stays the same, but without actually receiving the glorification of enabling that. So these guys are earning all the money, and the telcos are trying to catch up on that sense. Now, with the new landscape of virtual reality, the new landscapes of mobile edge compute, this needs to change, because if it doesn't change, the model will be broken. Companies like, the telcos will not have enough income, let's say this way, to justify from a return on investment perspective, invest in those infrastructures if the model stays the same. So the model needs to change. Now, where does models change? This model is changing in these three areas, right? So from an operational perspective, 5G will enable this cheaper asset purchase. It's going to be more scalable, and the design needs to be self-autonomous. So there's a lot of investments going on this area, and these will drive the cost down. Also, the radio access network will be able to drive much more bandwidth on the end consumer, so the cost to operate per gigabit will drastically decrease from a cost perspective. So a lot of cost savings actually will happen on the 5G turnover from a bandwidth perspective. The other area we're seeing is on the technology, right? So, and there are some ideas we are playing on our booth. You're more than welcome to go and check later. We're just run here on the front. One of them is augmented reality, volumetric 3D, right? So how these technologies require a new way of doing a network. Customers will want to experience more and more augmented reality. They will want to experience more and more immersive realities and volumetric videos. Volumetric videos has a lot of bandwidth, trust me. It's going to consume a lot of your network. If you don't do a content distribution network that can catch up with that, your networks will struggle. So the new technologies will naturally enforce a new way of doing the architecture of your network to drive the latency and the computing capacity over the edge of the network. And again, these are problems that are going to be solved by future technology, right? I'm seeing a lot of people talking about that. How much should I be ready for edge computing? Edge computing is solving problems that do not exist, right? The 5G will enable new applications, and those applications will require those use cases and those new architectures at the back end to support this. And the last one is the business model, right? So guess what? If I'm putting an edge compute, if I'm putting something that's going to be new, how am I going to monetize it, right? The monetization is key. Nobody wants to invest money and don't receive the investments from it, right? It's common sense. It's just natural business 101. So how you do that? So guess what? There is also technology that are supporting these things. Thinking about the investment cycle from developers trying to consume cloud architectures that are close to the edge versus telcos investing in those infrastructures that are close to the edge and getting paid for this. This is one of the key things from a business perspective that do not exist today. So this is one example. We have this demonstration in our booth. This is a volumetric 3D view of an artist. So basically, the idea here is that this type of applications will drive a lot of network utilization. You know, you have, for example, famous artists going and playing by your kids, you know, and or families or playing at parties. And this type of video streaming, it's a high definition, requires ultra low latency, ultra high bandwidth, and it needs to change at the flip of a time. So you change your direction of your camera, this will change as well. These are terabits of throughput if you think about a small place, a small neighborhood. A 5-minute video for that, you're talking about 8 cameras, is a couple of gigabytes. How you can enable that type of use case, which is going to come very, very soon, it's going to become a reality, how are you going to cope from a network perspective, right? It needs to change. The other one is, and we have Mobile Edge X as part of our booth as well. So Mobile Edge X, if you don't know, they are a mobile edge company. They provide a middleware software that supports the integration of developers trying to develop gaming, immersive reality, new access experiences. And basically, they're trying to make the cloud network and the cloud and network guys get paid more efficiently. So if you need resource in the edge, you're going to consume resource in the edge. If you need resource in the back end, guess what? They'll do also the integration, the interaction. The reason this exists is again, to drive a way to telcos to get paid by these new applications, right? These guys are behind Pokemon Go. For example, Niantic is working with them. They're creating new experiences. This is a demo that was part of the Mobile World Congress. And this is the future. Right now, for example, the networks have, literally stopped because of Pokemon Go's having thousands of people going to, Times Square, for example, New York, for an event. The 4G network has stretched that completely, right? So if you don't have this type of architectures, your network will struggle. You will suffer. And this is a clear example of things that we can do to support. Drones is the last one I want to talk about. We've done some partnerships with Vodafone in terms of showcasing the concept of the drone detection as a service. This is a challenge that is just increasing. I mean, I live in the UK, so I nearly struggled with my flights in December when that somebody tried to fly a drone near Gatwick, and the whole airport was stuck for 3 days. This is a challenge that's just going to increase. Now, the technology is a technology that you put on an enterprise. You put a couple of antennas on a premise, and they'll scan, and they'll trace the pilot, they'll trace the drone, and they'll create a camera that will point to the sky and try to correlate where the signal is coming from to see if the drone is actually having a camera or if the drone is carrying a brown package, right? Why does it make sense to talk about this concept here? This is a software conversation. This is a software conversation. There's nothing on the 5G and the mobile edge compute world that would prevent us to take this architecture and put on the mast cell network. So can you imagine now all of a sudden from a couple of dispersed antennas being everywhere, you have now a whole city with this protection. If you think about having flying drones delivering parcels like Amazon has been disclosing, guess what? You want to prevent those drones from being hijacked or prevent that the flight path is disturbed. There's no easier way to do that if you scale and use the mass network. And again, the last thing I want to talk about is the architectures about disaggregation. Disaggregation is something that's happening today. Putting an integration stack on that is a tough job. And we've been very successful in doing this as a business. We do for many, many customers. The idea is that we can actually integrate a lot of these things to accelerate the speed to market. So all the edge compute, the virtual reality, the activities we're seeing right now are activities that are happening. You need partners, you need people who have the experience on those use cases and experience to deliver that at scale. And I want to finish with a quote from Bill Gates, which is basically, again, we need to be talking about this right now. People get very, very complacent with what's coming in the next 10 years, and they think that everything's going to happen in 2 years. Guess what? We need to work now. Things that are going to happen in the next 2-3 years needs to be actioned right now, and find the people with the right ingredients to do that. Thank you.